How many artists can you name? Painters, creative people. Probably a few, right? What about movie actors? Dozens? It's not like hard to think of them, right? Musicians, music artists. Probably anyone here could name 100 without even having to look at your phone, right? It's easy. Now try inventors who aren't fictional or dead. Pretty tough, right? Invention isn't a legitimate career choice. You guys aren't trying to get your kids to grow up to be inventors. It's not something that we know what to do with. And so we celebrate artists, musicians, painters, novelists, actors, these creative people who can really, stir some emotion with their work. And, I have a playlist of sad songs I listen to for breakups, which hopefully I'll never need again. But that's what's possible. Actually, I'm kind of baffled by this one. But athletes are also a type of artist. We watch them perform in competition, and it satisfies something in us that appreciates the struggle, the excellence, and the domination. But what have they created? In almost every case, they're doing something that's been done before a lot of times. Even if they're doing it better, there's no act of true creation in a new pop song or romance novel, an NBA game. We call it art, but rather they're honing a craft. So creativity, creation, creators. To create means to do something new for the very first time. And it's easy to see this in a true artist like Jim Henson, Miyazaki, Wayne Gretzky, people who certainly mastered their craft, but they advance their art with these brilliant acts of creativity. These are the people who are rare. These are the true creative geniuses. And I often think we've lost the distinction, right? We've given endless accolades to the craft and have almost no formal recognition for the truly creative people. Rhyming palms are sweaty with mom's spaghetti can make you a rap god. The French language is praised for having so many different ways to express love in a nuanced way. Eskimos have over 40 words for snow. I have like one. Maybe there's a failing in our language to distinguish between creation and craft. So you may never have heard of Rodney Mullen, though he's one of the most prolific inventors in the world. Rodney invented nearly everything you've ever seen a kid do on a skateboard. He was the first one ever to ollie a skateboard off the ground, which is the basis for almost every skateboarding trick in the world. Rodney can think up something in his mind on the edge of what's possible with a skateboard, and he can spend months working on it to succeed at it the first time. Creation. 2 weeks later, kids in Kazakhstan who saw a video of that on YouTube will be doing the same trick, sometimes better than Rodney. Craft. To take something from 0 to 1 the first time, that takes careers, that takes lifetimes. That's hard. The very first time. Every time after that, the second time to the millionth time, that's a different thing. And you need both, but it's not usually the same people who are good at both, right? And it's those 0 to 1 people that I think we are somehow missing out on. We're undervaluing them. They seem too weird to us. We protect artists with copyright. The right to own their creations is just unquestionable. We call it theft when these rights are trampled. Taylor Swift had to retaliate against the owner of her albums by re-recording all of them and re-releasing them to get around the ownership of her own records. You know, we, as a society, we threw Vanilla Ice under the bus for the slightest infraction on some other artist's rights. Prince had to change his name to some incomprehensible, unpronounceable symbol to protest his record label. We always side with these creators. Nobody would question one of these artists' right to own their own work, right? But inventors are a special class of creator. Their creations have to transcend inspiration and artistic merits. You know, invention has to be functional. To succeed, it has to be useful. And when they do succeed, when inventors succeed, humanity gets a force multiplier on solving problems. We all level up. Where are the jobs for inventors? There's no university department for inventors. ASCAP and the Screen Actors Guild are like labor unions for artists. We don't have anything like that for inventors. Inventors can get patents, but if you try to enforce one, it will break your wallet and it will break your spirit. Our entire tech industry has a bad attitude about patents. Where are the investors for inventors? Maybe you could say the Nobel Prize celebrates inventors, but did you know Alfred Nobel invented dynamite? Yeah, he was an inventor. Only 600 Nobel Prizes have ever been awarded. How many Oscars? How many Grammys? How many Emmys? How many Hugos? This is the only time I've ever been on a red carpet as an inventor. We not only failed to celebrate our inventors, our most important of all creative geniuses, we failed to support them, to fund them, to elevate and invest in their work. Success stories for inventors are often in spite of the world around them. Artists aren't totally useless, but we could live without all of them. Without inventors, most of us would not be alive at all. 400 million people died of smallpox before Edward Jenner invented vaccination. Fritz Haber invented synthetic fertilizers to boost agricultural productivity, and Norman Borlaug invented high-yield crops using genetic selection. That sparked the Green Revolution, massively reducing famine, malnutrition, extending lifespans, saving 1 billion lives. Penicillin and other antibiotics made deadly bacterial infections treatable, saving hundreds of millions of lives. How many lives has Beyoncé saved? Jonas Salk made it possible to eradicate polio. But what if Jonas Salk could sling a mean electric guitar and the world will never know? What a wasted talent. Okay, so I'm talking about a bunch of old, dead inventors that we all take for granted. But I want to share someone new. When we were kids, we conflated nuclear bombs with nuclear reactors, and then we outlawed the wrong one. And if we had done it the other way around, you never would have heard of global warming. That's what's possible. We are living on the wrong fork in history, and we're still not being honest with ourselves about that. If you had a soup can full of depleted uranium, it would contain enough energy to power you and your entire family for your entire lifetime, one can of waste. Instead, it's going to be hundreds of rail cars of coal and gas, right? But the stuff is radioactive and dangerous and messy, and we don't know what to do with the waste, so we've been kind of saving it for our grandkids to make CrossFit gyms or something. But here's the thing. Last year, or about 2 years ago maybe, Stephen Wolfram introduced me to this guy, Rich Muller. Does that look like an inventor to you? Rich had this idea to just take the nuclear waste and put it back where we found it. Bury it in a borehole. We've got this entire industry that's real good at putting holes in the earth, like perforating the planet. So we just put the nuclear waste a mile down where it can't hurt anybody. Not a bad idea. I made this company called Deep Isolation. They're doing really well. But when I talked to Rich, he had another idea. An idea that nobody on the entire history of humanity ever thought of, as far as I can find out. Which is, as long as he's putting the uranium down there, why not put the whole reactor down there? So Rich invented a new kind of nuclear reactor that can fit in a borehole. It's a little bigger around than a manhole cover, maybe like this. It's about the size of a Toyota. It's easier to manufacture than a Toyota. It's real simple, and they bury it a mile deep in a borehole. It's unquestionably safe. There's 10 billion tons of rock between this reactor and anyone's backyard. Nothing can go wrong, but even if it did, say it melted down, there'd be no radioactivity at the surface. And it's a lot cheaper to make. In a normal reactor, you gotta build this like Fort Knox of cement around it. Yeah, the literal spec is a 747 has to be able to crash into your nuclear reactor without causing any problem. That costs like $1 billion. We don't have that cost. We get that containment for the cost of a hole. And they were on this kind of fast track to get it approved in a couple years, build a test core in a couple more years, then hopefully build the first commercial reactor in 2029. Last month, the US Department of Energy approved them and pushed them to do all of that by July. They will have the first reactors going live in the ground in July. This is exciting stuff. After that, they'll build thousands of them in a gigafactory. This is what's possible. This is what's happening right now. It's one of the most exciting turning points for humanity. So the reactor goes down underground. It's 15 megawatts. That's enough for like a skyscraper or a data center or a neighborhood. But if you need more energy, we just drill more holes. No problem. If you have a giant gigawatt scale data center, we drill a bunch of holes. In 3 acres, can do 1.5 gigawatts. Isn't that crazy? It's hardly any land, hardly any waste. And if you have any problem, just fill the hole with dirt and forget about it. This is a stockpile in Kentucky. 700,000 metric tons of depleted uranium. Left over from making reactors, but mostly left over from making bombs. Saving it for our grandkids. With this one stockpile, we can power the entire planet, including growth, for about the next 1,000 years. We don't even need to mine uranium. That's what's possible. That's what's happening. So look, I hope you will join me. Boycott dystopia. Forget all these bullshit stories about how we're going to hell in a handbasket. The world is actually about to get a lot more awesome because we're about to start doing the right thing. And if you can find somebody with crazy hair and a DeLorean and hanging out in their garage, give them a hug, try and help them out, work for them, invest in them, support them. So thank you very much. And if you want to hear about more inventors, I wrote a whole book filled with stories like this about incredible technologies that they've come up with that are coming. And so thanks for listening.